The air in East St. Louis carried the scent of sun-warmed concrete and dreams not yet spoken. It drifted over cracked sidewalks and chain-link fences, brushing the cheeks of children who ran barefoot through alleyways, echoing with the low thump of basketballs in a small house pressed close to the ground as if listening. A little girl woke before the sun. Her room, quiet and dim, held the hum of early morning crickets fading, the distant hush of a freight train. Jackie Joyner lay still beneath a cotton sheet, eyes open, listening for her mother's footsteps or her brother's voice in the next room. Outside, the first fingers of light pulled across the horizon, gently painting the rooftops ochre. Jackie slipped from bed, her breath light. Even at 12 years old, her lungs didn't fill easily, and the air fought her just a bit more than it did the other kids. But she didn't complain. She just moved slowly, steadily to the front step, where the concrete was still cool from the night. From that stoop, she could see the world she knew. Homes huddled in rows like old friends. Power lines etching the sky in straight, humming lines. The streets weren't paved in gold. They weren't paved well at all. But to Jackie, they held the glow of possibility. Her mother, Mary, would call her in softly, coaxing her to eat eggs, sometimes grits. A voice that wrapped around her like warm cloth. Her father, Al, left early for work at the railroad, his hands always smelling of iron and oil when he kissed her forehead in the quiet before dawn. That kiss always stayed with her longer than his shadow across the yard. Jackie's childhood was filled with motion, with rhythm, with breath drawn and released like prayers. Basketballs slapped against garage doors, socks turned grey on the bottoms from chasing siblings through hallways. Thuds, laughs, shouts. East St. Louis was tough, but Jackie's life wasn't joyless. It carried resilience like roots carry water, underground, hidden, persistent, always reaching. Most evenings, her grandmother would tell stories, not from books, but from memory, and always in a voice that leaned as if revealing secrets. Jackie would sit cross-legged on a blanket, arms around her knees, listening. Some people run because they're chased, her grandmother once said. Others run because they have wings. Jackie remembered that night as clearly as the blinking of streetlights out the window. Remembered thinking, I want wings. Her first true arena was the schoolyard. She chased basketballs with fury, zigzagging past boys who underestimated her. She leaped from swing sets, trying to see how far her shadow would land in the dust. Teachers began to trade whispers about her, as if describing a glow, not a girl. That Joyner child doesn't slow down, one said. She's got wires in her legs, said another, marveling. Jackie heard them, but didn't stop to listen. She ran because it felt like flying. Asthma came in, spells unseen, unwelcome. It crept into her lungs when the air was thick, especially after the rain. But even as her breath caught short, Jackie never sat still. She learned how to bend into pain, how to soften her footfall so that it wouldn't hurt as much when her chest tightened. She learned how to count her steps like beats, calming herself with rhythm. The fastest girl at Emerson Elementary couldn't always breathe easy, but she never stopped moving. There were early signs, not miracles, no lightning strikes, just little moments that glimmered in hindsight like dropped coins. A jump shot made on a sun-faded court. A relay team she anchored, with a lead no one could catch. Adults would shake their heads, smile, and say, that one has something. Her brother, Al Jr., big-hearted and steady, was always nearby. He became her partner in games, her rival, her first cheering section. He never let her win for being little. She had to earn it, and when she did, his smile was the brightest thing in any room they shared. Sometimes, Jackie would lay on her back in the grass behind the house, watching the sky shift. She'd trace the outlines of her dreams there. Not words, just shapes. She wanted to go far, not just to escape East St. Louis, but to honor it, to carry its weight with her and somehow transform it into something beautiful. Not louder, just more graceful, stronger, freer. And then there was Florence. They were not yet family, not in the way time eventually weaves hearts together, but Jackie had noticed her. Florence Griffith, a dancer in track shoes. Her strides had silk in them. Jackie watched, quiet and intent, as Florence moved like wind given form, her presence more suggestion than noise. There was something prophetic about it, like catching a glance of the future through a window only half open. Jackie hadn't met her yet, but she saw her, really saw her. A lighthouse girl, a shimmer, and somewhere inside Jackie, something stirred just a bit faster. Evenings returned like lullabies, and Jackie, tired from play and breathless from dreams, would tuck under her covers with dust still on her shins. The sounds of the neighborhood would slip past, the glass music thudding from a passing car. Someone calling out in the dark, cicadas chirping like clocks. She often dreamed of flying, not in the cartoon way, not with capes or wings, just running. So fast the world blurred and lifted underneath her, like the ground had given up trying to catch her. Once, half asleep, she whispered to her mother, "Will I ever really fly?" Her mother leaned in, brushed a hand through her hair. "You already are, baby." And in the hush that followed, stars blinked into place one by one over East St. Louis, above all the alleys and modest homes and dreamers who could barely breathe. One girl moved like a secret beginning to be spoken. The girl who seemed born to fly. The world hadn't yet heard her name, but it would. The knock of the basketball on uneven pavement kept time with Jackie's heartbeat. On the court rimmed by chain-link fence and the clatter of distant trains, she cut through boys twice her size like wind through leaves. She didn't ask to play, she challenged. All elbows and fast feet, her form was still untrained, but something there moved different. Something in the way she dropped her shoulder before a drive, in how she glanced at the hoop like it was a promise. She played until her arms ached and her lungs burned, then played some more. Not for applause, not even for winning. Jackie was collecting something. Every sprint, every leap, every scraped elbow, pieces of something unnamed in the halls of Lincoln Senior High. She was just another student passing between lockers and whispers, but in the gym, with the hum of fluorescent lights above her and the echo of her sneakers on hardwood, she was incandescent. Coaches watched her movements with furrowed brows, their notes losing vocabulary for what they saw. Her vertical leap was a rumor passed between teachers. Her drive for both basketball and track shook the expectations laid on girls like her. From neighborhoods like hers, they tried to label her tomboy, tough, prodigy. She ignored them all. Jackie just moved like her muscles were remembering. A rhythm older than language. She first ran track, not because someone asked her to, but because she wanted to see what her legs could do when they weren't distracted by a ball. The open track brought silence, not stillness, but a stillness within. There were no crowds, no teammates shouting, just white lines curving forward, and the sound of her breath aligned with each step. At dusk, with her sneakers biting into the cinders and the air growing cool and thick, Jackie ran alone. The kind of run where the body no longer debates itself, where the world peels away in layers. Every block of sweat and fight became a tuning fork inside her. In those moments, Jackie didn't race anyone. She ran to hear something an echo. Inside her chest that whispered again, try again. Her asthma remained a quiet thread running beneath each day. The tightness came during humid afternoons, or when the chem plant nearby filled the air with particulate ghosts. But Jackie forged an unspoken pact with her own breath. She learned the angles of her lungs, how to tiptoe around their weakest hours. She warmed herself against the ache of early fatigue by focusing on form, on balance. A grace emerged, not absence of effort, but a kind of peace within it. On her bedroom wall, she pinned up cutouts from magazines. Olympic runners caught mid-stride. BASKET, BALL, players frozen in flight. They weren't wishes, those pages. They were messages. Quiet letters to her future self. Coaches began speaking of her with reverence. A freshman phenom. But behind the praise was always a note of caution. Well, we'll see, or she's good now. But the pressure changes things. They didn't know Jackie's pressure wasn't public. It wasn't the newspaper clippings or trophies. It was her own reflection in the bathroom mirror at 5 a.m. when she looked into tired eyes and dared herself to keep becoming. Balancing sports wasn't just logistics, it was life. Schoolwork tucked in corners between practices. Friday nights traded for drills and repetitions. And still, she smiled. She loved the way her life took shape beneath constant motion. Love, for Jackie, wasn't sentimentality. It was action. It meant showing up, even when it was hard. At invitationals, she began to draw attention from beyond East St. Louis. Scouts from colleges with sharp suits and colder voices watched her run, clipboards in hand. They seemed impressed, but always hedged. You know, they'd say, she's excellent for a girl her size. Or, she's got hustle, but maybe not the frame for elite heptathlon. The words rolled off her like rain on skin. She didn't argue. She just ran faster. Behind every sideline, Al Jr. stood tall, arms crossed with a patient pride. He balanced her in ways no scoreboard could. When Jackie fretted over near losses or dropped balls, he didn't offer platitudes, just quiet reminders. You've still got more. That wasn't the edge. That was just the start. There weren't fancy scholarships yet. No guarantees. Just the feeling in her bones that this running, jumping, breaking her own rhythm was a map worth following, even if no one else could see it. Her high school years began to unfurl into a shape duality without conflict. By day, she dominated. On the court, driving layups into the boards like she was asking questions only hoops could answer. By afternoon, her cleats bit into earth, legs opening into longer strides, arms swinging like pendulums, powered by spite and joy. Audiences wondered track or basketball. There was pressure to choose. Everyone wanted champions, but they also wanted categories. Jackie didn't give them one. She saw no reason why a girl couldn't lift off one foot in a jump shot and again in a long jump without letting either define her. Little girls began to hang back after games and meets, and full of unspoken hopes. One offered her a drawing, a lopsided medal with the words fast like Jackie scrawled in red ink. Jackie folded it with more care than any official certificate she'd earned. One night, after another long day of dual practices, Jackie walked home alone. The sky had turned a navy blue so deep it swallowed sound. Her muscles throbbed, not in pain, but memory. Her breath, steady now, felt less effortful. Standing at the corner beneath the hum of a broken street lamp, she felt her soul grow quiet. She whispered something to no one, a promise, maybe, or a prayer. She wouldn't just play the game, she would learn to rewrite it. By her senior year, the letters came. Not one, not two, but dozens. Coaches from across the country wanted her, not just as a player, but as potential. There were rankings now, national standings and headlines with cropped photos of her breaking tape. The name Jackie Joyner began to ripple outward, like a stone dropped into a great, waiting lake. But fame didn't shift her rhythm, it only echoed it. Her mother still made breakfast in the quiet hours, served with little notes tucked beside her plate. Her father still kissed her brow before work. The small things grounded her not, despite her ambition, but because of it. And though lungs still tightened, and thighs still burned, Jackie learned to make that discomfort a kind of peace. Her body, always pushing back, had become a fluent song. She wasn't chasing ease. She was building fluency in struggle. They say greatness starts with a moment. For Jackie, it started in pieces. One lay in a wide arc of a ball through an open hoop. Another in a curve of a lane that beckoned without speaking. All these fragments settling into one truth she had yet to name, but always knew she was already becoming. She just had more ground to run. The bus to Los Angeles hummed beneath her, a low, endless sound like breath held tight. Jackie watched the land unravel outside the window, fields folding into scrub, into city, into the edges of something vast. East St. Louis blurred behind her. She didn't cry, not because she wasn't sad, but because her tears were already spoken with every goodbye, every careful bag packed by her mother, every quiet blessing whispered by her father as he loaded her things into the car. UCLA loomed like a new language. The campus stretched wide with sun-washed buildings and olive trees like gatekeepers. The Pacific air carried a different rhythm, salt and openness. Jackie found herself moving with an unfamiliar mix of wonder and unease. She missed her grandmother's voice, her brother's laughter echoing off alley walls. In Los Angeles, nobody knew who she was yet. That anonymity was both gift and burden. Dorm rooms smelled like new plastic and shared mistakes. Her roommate greeted her with gentle curiosity, the first of many faces who would ask her what it was like to come from East St. Louis. Jackie learned to answer in pieces. It was hard, she might say, or it made me fast. She never spoke of the exact shape of home, of how much it hurt to leave it behind. Even temporarily, balancing her life at UCLA felt at times like trying to carry water in her hands. Classes piled up with dense reading, and her professors didn't care how many miles she'd run before 8 a.m. on the track. Her body responded in fierce, sharp bursts. But off it, she often felt unmoored. She ate alone at first, walked campus like a ghost in sweats and headphones, music fuzzing out the edge of her homesickness. There were few others who looked like her in lecture halls. Her skin, her voice, her guarded softness stood out, but she wouldn't change them, not even one shade. She carried her grandmother's stories in her tone, her mother's kindness in the arc of her fingers, her father's steel in the way her spine refused to bend. Jackie decided she would make space, not shrink. Track practices at UCLA tossed her into a blaze of higher expectation. No longer the fastest without trying, she now competed against women who would also run with fire at their heels. Still, there was something in Jackie, something subtle but unmistakable, that made her stand out. Her run wasn't a sprint. It was a song of movement and meaning. And there, on that team, was Bobby Kersee. He was sharp-eyed and relentless. His instruction, more riddle than command. At first, Jackie resisted. She had always guided herself. Why trust someone to steer that now? But Bobby saw the architecture of her potential. Not just the muscle, but the mind, too. He spoke to her not in praise, but in puzzles. You can run fast, he'd say, but can you run wise? Jackie learned to listen with more than her ears. There, connection deepened alongside her training. Not in one falling moment, but in a series of steady collisions. Perspective, understanding, resilience. He demanded more, because he saw more. And in that sharp asking, Jackie began to unearth levels in herself she didn't know existed. Discipline arrived not as restriction, but as a honing. Florence Griffith shimmered through campus like a mirror set to sunlight. She was laughter and color, braided grace and quiet thunder. Jackie studied her not with envy, but a fascinated awe. Florence floated where Jackie charged. Together they formed a promise that beauty and power were never opposites, only partners dancing to the beat of intent. The weight of her identity remained. She was black, a woman, from a place most people only mentioned in passing headlines. The air around her sometimes thickened with assumptions she grew tired of challenging. But each time she stepped onto the track or into the gym, her breath cleared. Movement spoke what words could not. She didn't need defense. She had definition. The Olympic trials arrived quietly on the calendar, but roared in Jackie's chest. The 1984 Games would be in Los Angeles, on ground she now called home. In name, if not yet in feeling. She trained harder, slept lighter, lived each day in a rhythm of fuel and fatigue. There were testing days when her lungs rebelled, when her legs said no. But Jackie pushed gently, insistently, past each plateau. At the trials, the noise fell away, crowds blurred. Lines on track pointed her forward like prophecy. When the starting gun cracked, something in Jackie clicked loose. Not panic, not rush. A calmness thick and whole wrapped her body in command. She moved not for approval but for alignment, like a tuning fork struck deep inside her chest. She qualified. The moment settled into like a sunrise she could feel warming her ribcage. At the Los Angeles Olympics, the air buzzed with heat and history, home soil magnified expectation. Jackie saw her face in newspapers now. Comments poured from commentators and strangers alike what she might be, what she would not become. She folded them away like receipts noticed, then discarded. For those games, she stood at the cusp of greatness. The heptathlon pushed her into an unforgiving spotlight across all disciplines. She summoned consistency with muscles worn thin. By the process, after days of competing, of watching the scoreboard flick numbers that tested her spirit, Jackie stood with a silver medal and a line in her heart that did not settle. She had medaled, as one of the youngest in her field. But in the quiet after the anthem, a whisper returned. You were made for more. And she believed it, not with arrogance, but with clarity. The next morning, while others celebrated or packed to leave, Jackie went on a solo run. No audience, no stopwatch, just pavement, far from arenas, and the sound of her breath finding its rhythm once more. The Olympic silver didn't define her, it activated her. She felt it now, not just the hunger, but the shape of the path. Jackie Joyner wasn't only going to be a runner, she would become a symphony in motion. And somewhere in the near distance, her gold was waiting quiet and certain, like dawn before the first bird sings. The heptathlon does not begin with a starting pistol. It begins in silence, in the hush before dawn, in the ritual of wrapping laces, in the whisper of stretching limbs, reaching forward to greet another brutal promise. 7 events, 2 days, endless variables. Jackie traced the shape of each in her mind before she ever stepped onto the track. The 100-meter hurdles like the first breath of a storm. The high jump holding the ghost of every failed attempt like a patient wind. The shot put deceptively gentle in its curve, hiding force in grace. The 200 meters end of day won a sprint not of speed, but of stored will. Then came day 2, the long jump, her old and faithful friend. The javelin, temperamental and solemn. And the 800 meters, the final crucible, where tired legs and hopeful hearts meet in circle. She knew them all like a story told backward, each event braided into the next, not with ease, but with understanding. Every movement a negotiation, every breath a barter. At first, Jackie didn't choose the heptathlon, but it called to her in pieces. Each event matched a fragment of who she was. Power, finesse, focus, recovery, repeat. A dance with many steps, some brutal, others quiet. She began training with the impatience of someone who already sensed the truth, that gold lay not in a single act of brilliance, but in the worship of every unglamorous repetition. Mornings slipped into evenings in a relentless rhythm. Joyner-Kersee stood watch, not as a dictator, but as a mirror. He pushed her toward the edges of herself, sometimes with silence, sometimes with challenge. Her body transformed. She gained muscle, yes, but more than mass, she gained clarity. Confidence came with calluses. Her arms no longer moved just to reach, but to drive. Her legs responded to meters like string, to tension ready to sing. Injuries arrived as unwelcome guests. The knee, the back, the breathing Jackie faced each with a patience that looked like defiance. Pain became a language she learned to decipher, not fear. Some days, her body betrayed her. Others, it offered quiet revelation. Always. She moved forward, she turned the daily grind into meditation. The track was prayer, the gym, a place of holy wait. Ice baths held shrines to recovery. Every ache told her she had asked more, not out of punishment, but promise. She spoke often of challenges, not as obstacles, but invitations. "I thrive on challenges," she once said. A simple statement, but for Jackie, it wasn't a slogan. It was code, a cipher, a vow. Because thriving for her didn't mean achieving under perfect skies. It meant blooming where storms were the norm. It meant taking the unexpected and making it elemental. And so, the heptathlon became hers, not as a conquest, but a harmony. She studied opponents the way a musician studies silence. Not for weakness, but for timing. She wasn't the fastest in every event, not the strongest in each lift, but she was the most complete. She became the kind of athlete whose excellence couldn't be summarized with ease. You had to witness it, sit with it, let it unfold. In 1986, at the Goodwill Games, Jackie revealed what she'd been crafting in the quieter performance, so fluid it shook the sport awake. Her movements across disciplines were more than athletic. They were architectural. 7 events, layered and constructed into a soaring arc of human symmetry. That victory didn't trend. It didn't roar loudly from headlines, but it hummed. It carried something was coming. Competitors knew it. Coaches whispered it. Spectators felt it. Jackie didn't need to declare herself. Her body was already writing the poem, lines carved in turf and track, breath measured in meters, hope outlined in calisthenics and chalk. Still, she remained hungry, not for adoration, for mastery. She lived in that rare place where ambition met humility. She knew she hadn't arrived. Not yet. That year, her journals, filled with notes not of celebrations, but of adjustments, a tighter form on the hurdles, a softer launch in javelin, more space after recovery between events, where others celebrated. Jackie studied, because becoming the best in the world is not one moment. It is a constant, shedding dot, letting go of ease, letting go of prediction, welcoming difficulty like sunrise. She read about decathletes, the male counterparts to her discipline. The world paid them more attention, more currency, but Jackie didn't protest. She performed at every meet was a conversation, every record broken, a reply. And though the heptathlon was relentless in its ask, Jackie governed, then gave more. She molded herself into a force not by dominating a single domain, but by learning the language of all seven. She never pretended to be effortless, but she made pain look like poetry. Watching her was like listening to a symphony in motion, each note built from exhaustion and will, and still swelling with pace and crescendos. She didn't run from her limits. She dragged them forward with her. A new revelation bloomed within. She wasn't just training her body, she was carving a legacy, quietly, steadily, in a world that told girls to pick. She refused to narrow. Her dreams weren't segmented, they were layered, expansive. Jackie Joyner wasn't preparing to win, she was preparing to remake what winning even meant. And somewhere behind her eyes, a new goal took shape, not just to compete, but to go where no one ever had, to score a number so high, even the stars might have to adjust their own measures of brilliance. And so she ran, she jumped, she lifted, she breathed, she endured, and in the quiet between reps, a storm gathered light inside her, soft but certain, unspoken but waiting. The air before soul was not silent, but saturated, with anticipation, with breath held across oceans, with a kind of weight that only time can gather, years curled into muscle, tendon, and resolve. Jackie stood at the edge of it, finely honed, and quietly burning. She was not nervous, she was listening, to her breath, to the rhythmic murmurs of her heartbeats, to the echo of every tireless practice, summoned now as memory folded into bone. She had come to South Korea wearing more than a uniform. She brought expectation. She brought record books straining to keep up with her pace. She brought the impossible made increasingly plausible. Across press tables, her name was spoken in reverent predictions. The world asked, could she do it? Could she set a world record in the heptathlon? Jackie did not answer with words. She answered with movement, with patience, with exacting grace. The first day began with the snap of hurdles, their clicking rhythm like counted promises. Jackie burst from the blocks not with force, but with purpose. Every stride stitched her training into fabric. Her time, blistering, one of the fastest ever run in the event. But she didn't smile. She held something back, not effort, but celebration. Next came the high jump, not her strongest, but under that sole sun, she ascended like resolve given height, cleared bar after bar until shoulders brushed air thinner than uncertainty. The world leaned in. Still, she remained composed. Between jumps, she mirrored calm. Towel around her shoulders, eyes on nothing, like hearing music no one else could. Shot baton, event requiring both patience and violence. Jackie stood in the ring and let silence gather around her. She turned, stepped, released. The ball cut an arc toward earth like punctuation, efficiency over force. Her throw landed farther than most could fathom from someone who looked more ballet than brute. Then 200 meters welcomed her familiar stride. She eased into the blocks, almost relaxed. But when the gun cracked, her body surged like a story taking flight. Sleepers in faraway time zones watched her blur against crimson track, watched her legs cycle with a rhythm so fluid they questioned gravity. She crossed the finish with distance between her and everyone else, physical and metaphorical. As night curled around the stadium and day one closed, Jackie lay beneath sheets woven from victory and vigilance. She had a lead astonishing but unfinished. Her body hummed with fatigue, but her mind moved forward. 7 events offered no resting place. Each step was a thread yet to tie the whole. Morning returned, gold-veined and watchful. Jackie stepped into long jump with the stride of someone returning home. This was her sanctuary, her first true love. As a girl, she'd raced the length of schoolyards, leaping to chase shadows. Now, she soared above measurements. The pit opened to receive her as if finally catching up to her potential. One jump landed far enough to make statisticians search for new ways to measure brilliance. Then, the javelin, the rebel among the 7. The spear that resists even the perfect form. Jackie had struggled with it before. Its awkward motion, its demand for balance and momentum. But this time, with the world watching, she found the seam. Her grip was light, her release sharp. The javelin sliced forward and landed with authority like an exclamation where once there had been ellipses, and then the 800. The culmination not just of competition, but of will. The race at the end of exhaustion. The one event that asks the body to give not what it has, but what it believes it no longer holds. Jackie crouched at the line, eyes low, breath deep. Around her, other athletes shifted nervous, hopeful. The gun fired, and they ran. 2 laps, a minute and more of sheer unraveling. Her legs resisted. Her lungs barked in the thickness of soul's summer. But her stride did not yield. She pulled herself forward the way true champions do, not by sprinting, but by refusing to stop. The finish line did not explode at her feet. It whispered gently, parting beneath her as she crossed it. She walked after, slowly, her chest rising and falling like tide. Around her, numbers clicked into place. 7,291 points. A number not just large, but legendary, a new world record. Still, the world record. She had not merely won. She had rewritten what was possible. But soul wasn't finished with her yet. The long jump final arrived days later. Another chance to soar. Most would have been spent, tired, content with historic gold. But Jackie stepped back onto the runway. With the same focus, the same reverence for momentum. Each attempt sliced the air. Something sacred spiraled from her steps, as if she no longer touched down so much as reminded the ground where she had been. On her best leap, she sailed past the mark and landed another gold. 2 gold medals at the same games, in events demanding different kinds of genius. On the podium, under an unfamiliar flag, with a familiar anthem rising into the stadium sky, Jackie stood, not as a surprise, but as a certainty. The day had been coming. The girl from East St. Louis, who once ran to feel free now, stood at the summit of human performance. But there were no tears, only stillness, peace, the kind of calm that Follows storms, not survived, but mastered. Reporters rushed after, microphones outstretched. How did it feel? They asked breathlessly. Did you know, during the jump, during the run, what did it mean to win gold twice? Jackie answered softly, like closing a door behind a room filled with light. It felt like everything clicked. It felt like being ... whole. The world would spin on, later games would come. New runners would rise. But in Seoul, in 1988, something deeper happened. A bar was set not just in numbers, but in essence. Jackie Joyner-Kersee didn't simply win. She created a vision of what power could look like when braided to grace, and in stadiums, schoolyards, and solitary practice tracks around the world. Girls would lace their shoes a little tighter, run a little farther, not just chasing her marks, but echoing her motion, calling to the same quiet truth that excellence is not in dominating, it is in becoming, relentlessly, radintly, completely. The body does not forget greatness, but it does change its way of carrying it. After Seoul, Jackie returned to the world, not as a girl becoming, but as a woman who had arrived. She had reached the summit most people only tiptoe toward, and yet, in the months and years that followed, she found herself faced with a quieter, harsher test, maintaining brilliance in the shadow of its own height. Training continued, as it always had, in the margins of days. But the rhythm shifted. There was more press, more eyes, more demands from every corner. She signed autographs beneath stadium lights and answered the same questions in endless variations. People didn't ask if she was tired. They asked when she would break her record again. She smiled, but inside, the weight pressed. In 1992, Barcelona called another Olympics, another test of mettle and memory, but Jackie's body no longer moved in silence. It carried echoes now. Her right leg murmured complaint, her back a note of fatigue. Injuries assembled in small rebellions, like whispers turning to a chorus. Still, she trained, not because she had to prove she was the best, but because the motion itself had become her language. Every jump, every breath was a phrase in a lifelong conversation. The heptathlon returned as old terrain. She mapped its curves again with reverence, though now with a careful tread. Jackie still placed, still medaled, a bronze in Barcelona. Not defeat, not even disappointment, but a new shape. One softened by time, yet still edged in fire. People asked if the spark had dulled, but no, it had not dulled. It had deepened. Age became an unseen terrain to navigate. Jackie listened to her body. Mora, new partnership, negotiated daily. She stretched longer, moved slower between drills. But the hunger, the edge that remained untouched. Between competitions, her life widened. She married Bobby Kersee, a coach and compass who had seen every layer of her evolution. They moved as equals, iron sharpened to challenge, but softened by care. And in the crater of their orbit stood Florence Griffith Joyner. Joe, the sprinter who moved like silk haloed in thunder. They had chased different tapes, lived inside different styles, but their bond ran deeper than finish lines. They had become sisters, not just in marriage, but in marrow. Joe rose like dusk fire in Seoul. Her records shimmered alongside Jackie's. Together, they rewrote what the world imagined a woman could do on the track. And then, the silence. September 1998. Florence passed in her sleep. The world stilled, stunned, page headlines stamped with disbelief. Jackie sat with the grief, not as an icon, but as a sister. She tried to make sense of a light gone out too soon, one that had danced alongside hers. The pain nested deep below the medals and the memories. Few moments in Jackie's story ever brought her to stillness. This one did. Loss has its own gravity, and Jackie learnt to carry it without letting it dim her stride. She began to step back, not from meaning, but from spotlight. The body could no longer give in the ways it once had, but the heart had more to offer. Much more. East St. Louis hadn't forgotten her, and she had never forgotten East St. Louis. She returned not in triumph, but in tenderness. The track star became a pillar. She laid the blueprint for something larger than legacy. The Jackie Joyner-Kersee Center opened its doors near the fields where she once raced shadows beneath buzzing street lamps. It offered programs for kids to learn, to run, to lead. It created space, not for medals, but for momentum, for energy that passed hands like torches. "You don't have to be me," Jackie whispered to those who came through the doors. "You just have to be you, all the way." In rooms filled with books and basketballs and dreams, she found a new rhythm, a rhythm of giving. The foundation wasn't a retirement, it was an extension. The longest leg in a relay that didn't end at finish lines. Jackie studied what her own girlhood had hungered for and gave it away with both hands. Workdays looked different now. Fewer spikes, more spreadsheets, but purpose held steady. She visited schools, held clinics, spoke not in applause, but in presence. And the ones who listened, young girls with silent battles tucked in their chests, felt something sublime. They saw her not only as an athlete, but as a map, a living answer to the questions they hadn't learned how to ask. She remained active in athletics longer than most thought possible. At the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta, her final games, Jackie lined up one last time. The long jump. She didn't soar as far as she once did, but still, the crowd clapped until palms turned sore. They weren't cheering distance, they were cheering devotion. She waved once, took a breath, and stepped away. Not fallen, fulfilled. Jackie gave no farewell speech, no fanfare, just the sound of shoes unfastened after years of motion. Greatness likes to talk in roars, but Jackie showed it can whisper to. And so she shifted from athlete to architect, from competitor to cultivator, planting futures where once stood fences, replacing limits with lineage, not in records, not in reach. Some things never leave the bloodstream, like rhythm, like memory, like the soft voltage of purpose that carries itself even after the sprint ends. Jackie Joyner-Kersee never stopped moving. Even when she no longer trained for an audience, her steps still echoed with intention. In the quiet years after competition, her movement turned inward, downward, into soil and heart and the slow growth of something deeper than medals. Legacy doesn't always announce itself with ceremony. Sometimes it's just in the way you show up, in the way your name becomes less yours and more a bridge stretched across generations. Jackie never asked to be an icon, but the world quietly placed that word beside her, reverently, like a flower on a windowsill. And the numbers, those staggering, stoic symbols of greatness, they stayed etched in the record books. Her 7,291 points in the heptathlon remained untouched, like a sentry guarding the height of human capability. Others had tried, many had come, but the summit she carved waited still, the atmosphere thinner there, oxygen laced with intensity only. She had seemed able to breathe. Journalists asked when her record would fall. Jackie would politely shrug. "Records are made to be broken," she said, but her smile carried another truth, that what she built wasn't just numerical, it was spiritual, structural, a monument as invisible as air and just as essential. She began to watch others rise, athletes citing her not just as inspiration, but orientation. They didn't want to just win, they wanted to endure with grace, to move with that same symmetry of power and peace. They had studied Jackie the way dancers study stillness, learning when to hold, when to release. Mentorship came naturally to her. She didn't posture, she didn't preach. She simply remained present, clear-eyed and warm, with a subtle command that came not from ego, but earned reverence. Olympians came seeking advice and left with reminders that humility was a form of strength, and that greatness without gratitude was only noise. There were honors, shelves of them, lifetime achievement awards, honorary degrees, foundations bearing her name. Sports Illustrated named her the greatest female athlete of the 20th century, a sentence heavy with weight. History placed against a single name, as if trying to describe the arc of light with just one word: Joyner-Kersee. She accepted each with that same calm quiet from her track days, the afterglow of effort, not performance. Her speeches were brief, her voice softer than expected, but beneath it, the same cadence pulsed, the assurance of someone who knew every mile she'd had to run to arrive at this stillness. Statues rose in her likeness. Murals sprawled across underpasses and school walls. Little girls asked their mothers, "Who is she?" And the answer was always the same: "That's Jackie." She ran like the world couldn't hold her. The most profound impact she left was not aerial, it was horizontal. Her story didn't lift her above others, stretched outward, across classrooms and community rooms, and family stories passed at dinner tables. She became a shape girls could fit themselves into, a name that shaped possibility. She often reflected, in private, on what it meant to be the first. The pressure, the pride, the solitude. There had been few maps for her when she started, just instinct, faith, and footsteps in the dirt. So she made one, piece by piece, so that others could walk more easily. Grace became her signature, not the soft, ornamental kind, but the fierce, dignified type, the kind that absorbs criticism, misjudgment, pain, and gives back steadiness. Jackie's grace became its own force, like water that wears down stone, not with fury, but with unyielding flow. There were interviews, documentaries, shoe lines with her name stitched into the tongue. But in all of that, she only cared for one thing: resonance. Did her life leave a note someone else could pick up? Could her struggle be distilled into strength that another girl might sip from when her own got thin? And yet, she never let admiration become stagnation. She stayed current by remaining curious. She studied new athletes, not with comparison, but celebration. She spoke of Simone Biles, Serena Williams, Sha'Carri Richardson, not as competitors to her legacy, but as chapters it had helped shape. Her records might one day fall. That's the design of legacy. It doesn't cling, it releases. Jackie understood that better than most. That true greatness is not in permanence, but in passing something on while it still shines. Still, for all the numbers, all the praise, all the milestones, the image that lingers most isn't of her on a podium. It's of her walking the track. At dusk, no crowd, no scoreboard, just her, hands on her knees, lungs hungry, eyes soft, at peace with what she gave. Because Jackie Joyner-Kersee didn't just run to win, she ran to carve a path, and then, with unmatched grace, she left it wide, open behind her. The sun dips low over East St. Louis, casting long shadows over cracked pavement and the silver curve of a running track. Light glints off chain-link fences and faded backboards. The air is thick with summer stillness, a kind of hush that doesn't ask for silence, it invites it. In the soft pause between dusk and memory, Jackie walks the perimeter of the field. She moves slowly now, not out of constraint, but of reverence. A group of girls gathers near the starting blocks, their laughter bell-like, their ponytails catching wind. Jackie watches from a short distance still, quiet, arms folded loosely, like she's holding a secret she's not quite ready to speak. The girls stretch, squabble over lanes, and glance toward her with eyes wide, not with fear but with possibility. On this soil where she once chased echoes, Jackie sees herself etched, in every bold stance and trembling breath. One girl fidgets, gripping her knees, eyes flickering between the line and the sky. Jackie steps in gently. She doesn't offer technique, doesn't talk of world records. She touches the girl's shoulder and says, "Just run like you're telling a story, one only your feet know how to say." The track hums as the girls begin, their feet thudding in clumsy rhythm. Some stumble, some fly. Jackie smiles, not for precision, but for courage. Every lap is a stanza, every gasp a verse. When they finish, flushed and panting, one girl turns back. She's last in line, but not defeated. She looks at Jackie and asks, "Did I do okay?" Jackie nods once, her eyes steady. "You did more than okay." They barely know what she accomplished, these girls. They haven't memorized the numbers, don't know the timelines, but they've heard the name. They've seen the photos on the wall. They've touched the stripe of that same track and felt it pulse underfoot. That's legacy, not grandeur, but continuity. Not the weight of history, but the warmth of inheritance. Later, when the field clears and shoes lie untied beside gym bags, Jackie takes one more walk down the lane. Her joints sing a different tune now. Less brass, more cello. But she takes each step like breath, a reminder, not of past glory, but of present offering. A breeze picks up, light and sure, carrying the smell of grass and sun-warmed rubber. Jackie stops near the long jump pit, the sand smoothed over like a fresh page. She gives a half smile, tilts her face to the gentle, darkening sky above her. Stars begin their ceremony. Across the neighborhoods she once ran through barefoot, porch lights flicker on. Life continues, kids on bikes, dogs barking behind fences, songs winding out of cracked car speakers. But in this pocket of quiet, something sacred holds. She isn't chasing time anymore. She's holding space. A reminder that greatness is not a moment, it's a motion, like wind threading through trees, like hands opening to give, like footsteps that echo long after they're gone that night. As Jackie sits on the edge of the track she helped give back to her city, a young girl walks past with her mother. The child stops, eyes wide. "Are you really her?" she asks. Jackie laughs softly. "I used to be." The mother smiles, nudging her daughter forward. But the girl lingers, looking back in that gaze wide with hope. Bright with becoming, Jackie sees the beginning again, not hers, theirs. Beneath a sky full of quiet witnesses, Jackie stands one last time, not to run, but to listen to the laughter, echoing from the locker rooms, to the footfalls of futures still finding their measure, to the rustle of ambition in the wind. One girl from East St. Louis once dreamed of flying. The world watched her soar. Now her whispers echo in every field, where breathless hearts lace up and chase what calls. And in that wind soft, endless, certain her story lives on.